So welcome to the Thursday edition of the Don Cherry Grapevine podcast. And on the Monday podcast, Dad, we were talking about some stuff, and you said you wanted to talk about the code of hockey when you were playing.
Well, never mind when I was playing, and anybody was playing in the hockey right now. If you ever noticed Semenko, you never noticed Probert or any of those guys that are really tough. They never picked on a rookie. Very seldom they picked on a rookie, unless the rookie really asked for it. And they never picked on anybody small. They always had a guy. That was the code. Never pick on somebody that couldn't fight. And I remember, just to jump in, I'll just tell you about a guy on our club. We played. I never forgot it.
Where were you playing?
Oh, I was playing for Kitchener, but I don't want to go on too much. It's too close. But what happened was that I went in the corner with this guy, and they ended up, he was a great fighter. And when he got older, he was a pretty good fighter. But at this time, he was just a rookie. And I remember he dropped the gloves, and I dropped the gloves in the corner. What I was doing in their corner, I have no idea. And he dropped the gloves, and he was the worst fighter of the world. Like he tried to fight. He was just learning. And I hit him a couple of times, and I could see that he couldn't fight, so I left him off. I got to tell you one more story about that, too, before I get in there. I don't know what I was doing in the other team's end, but somehow or other, I ended up on top of him on center ice, this young rookie. I ended up on top of him, and I let on I was going to hit him. I would have never hit him, and I looked over at the bench, and all the bench was there, and some of you people in Montreal will remember a guy named Floyd Bouchard Curry. And he was played for the Montreal Canadiens, but now he was coaching Ottawa Hall. It was Ottawa Hall. He was coming on the ice. Believe it or not, it's the first time I've ever seen a coach coming on the ice to protect one of his own players. But anyhow, so one of the guys on the club saw that this guy couldn't fight. He was a kid, but he's big, and he couldn't fight. And he got him and just cleaned his clock like you couldn't believe, cut them all up. And it's funny how the players respected the code. They knew you should never, ever fought that kid because he couldn't fight again. And they turned against this guy. I'll never forget they turned against him. And every time this guy and I, we had a little thing going on points. He was an older defenseman like me, confirmed minor leaguer. And they'd give assists to me and everything. I think I ended up with 13 goals. I was tip-ins and stuff like that. But the code is you never fight a guy smaller, and you never fight a guy that can't fight.
Dad, we've talked about Stan Jonathan in the past and all, and you talked about the code. So tell us, but you never mentioned about the Stan Jonathan fight and Bouchard fight, which was pretty famous.
That was a pretty good one. I'd have to say it was the best injury-wise in a fight I think I'd ever seen. And Jonathan was a good hockey player. Jonathan was a high plus. I think he had the most accurate shot in the league for his rookie year. And he got 26 goals, which, I don't want you to think he's a dummy, but I remember this happening. We were in the finals, the semifinals, or maybe the finals.
It was semifinals. It was 79, 75.
Was it?
Yep.
I forget. We were in the semifinals. And it was in Boston Gardens. And for some reason, I must ask Scotty someday why he put on all his tough guys. And I look out, holy smokes. I mean, he had Shatra, Leapin. I mean, he had
Bouchard, yeah.
He had some tough guys. So I had two of my terrific guys, the Winsink guys who could play. By the way, let's talk about guys that can fight but can play. I never ever had a guy sit on the bench and send him out there to go like a mad dog and fight like that. These guys could play. All they could play. So anyhow, I had Winsink on the left side who could really throw him. Got 25 goals. 25 or 26 goals. And on the right side, I had Terry O'Reilly, who was our leading guy, who could really throw them, I'll tell you that. And we had Peter McNabb, who was a great goal scorer in the middle, but he couldn't throw them. He couldn't throw them very good. We saw him one fight, eh?
Yeah, he fought. I remember he fought a guy in front of the net.
Yeah, we said, it's Peter. Anyhow, he didn't like fighting. So when
he's a pacifist.
So he was...
He didn't have to fight with those two wingers.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. When he got 43 goals, he was a great scorer. So anyhow, I pulled him off, and I sent out Stan Jonathan. Well, I think he said later in the paper it was the happiest moment of his life when he saw all the guys that Montreal was out there.
Yeah, because everybody knew something was going to happen.
Something was going to happen. Everybody in the Boston Gardens knew when all those guys were out there. So I remember what happened was, I don't know if Pierre really wanted to go or not. He was a good guy, and Dan wanted to go, and he kept pulling him with a stick, and they went at it, boy. I'll tell you. And the funny thing about it, that Bouchard was a big guy. He was about 6'3", and Stan was about 5'9", but he was Tuscarora Indian, and boy, could he throw him. And he, like I say, 26 goals. So they were throwing him, and all of a sudden, Stan switched, and I didn't know this either. He switched from his right hand, he switched to his left, and he was as good with his left as he was his right, and I remember he hit Pierre Zonk right in the nose. Down he goes, broken nose. And on the way down, he hit him. And Stan was one of those guys. When you get a guy down, that was another code. He usually left not for Stan. And I remember he drove him about, and there was more blood. I remember John D'Amico, God love him. Blood was pouring.
Yeah, he got cut with a stick. When they dropped the stick, he got cut right in the forehead, right between the eyes.
Oh, I mean, blood was all over the place.
It was a pretty bloody fight.
And they switched over, and I think he had a broken nose and teeth and the whole deal. And Stan never had a mark on him, but Pierre was really, really beat up. He was a good guy, and I never forgot. That was the best fight I think I ever saw. And they asked Pierre after the game, "Do you think he'll ever play in the National Hockey League again?" He says, "Yeah, if I take up the organ."
Well, if you remember, Cindy, there was a really big controversy in Boston after that fight. And what happened was, all year we watched the Bruins on TV 38, Channel 38, and we used to see the replays of the fights. And so we were used to, waiting for the replay. And when Boston was playing Montreal, Hockey Night in Canada controlled the cameras in the replay. And Ralph Mellenby, who was the guy that hired you, right?
The boss.
He was the boss, and he hired you for Coach's Corner. He didn't believe in fights and wouldn't show the replay. So we're all at home, and all the Bruins fans are watching the game, and we're waiting for a replay of the fight, and it doesn't come up. And the two Bruins announcers were Fred Cusick and Johnny Pearson. They kept saying, "I can't believe we're not seeing a replay of that fight. I can't believe it." And the conspiracy was born that the reason they didn't show the fight was because it was a Boston Bruin beating up a Montreal Canadian. And the fans were going crazy in Boston. It was
talk shows, a great talk.
It was on the talk shows that how the Hockey Night in Canada is biased against Toronto. And I think you were helping fanning the flames.
Oh, I was helping.
And they were saying it was biased. And Ralph's going, "Well, we don't show hockey fights." And the people just, it was really us against them. It was just going.
I remember when I was walking through the customs, the guy, and your purpose here. And he said, "Your purpose here? What is your purpose coming to Quebec? My purpose here is to beat the Montreal Canadiens." Oh boy, throwing coins.
Yeah, didn't you start throwing coins?
Well,
at
what
each other?
happened? Here's what happened. I digress. We're getting into something else here. But what happened was, I saw a paper on the floor, and it had a picture of Greg Shepard and his baby. It was a Montreal paper. Don't ask me why. So I picked it up, and he says, and it was a paper just laying on the ground. And the custom guy said, "That's my paper, and do not take it." It was going to the garbage. So I took a bunch of change, and I said, here's some change for the paper. I'll pay for the paper. And he hated me so much. Gee, a lot of people hate me. They took the change and fired at me, and I picked up the change and I fired it back at the customs.
And this was the custom guy.
It was a customs guy.
Oh, my
boy, they
goodness.
got the manager coming, the whole deal. But anyhow, that was it. So now we're in Montreal. Go ahead, you pick it up.
And then, so there was another kind of schmozzle, and Bobby Schmatz and Mario Tremblay squared off, and Tremblay got a lucky shot in and cut Schmatzy. And then tell what happened when.
Well, what happened was, I'm thinking, I wonder if they're going to show that again. I wonder if they're going to show that. I wonder if they're going to have a repeat of that there. And the Hockey Night in Canada office was right down the hall from. So I ran while the game is on. I ran down and slid inside the room, and there's Ralph sitting there. I said, "Are you going to show that again? I suppose you're going to show." And he looked up there, he's looking at the bench. There's no coach there, and I'm in the studio. When I left, they told me after. He says, "That guy's nuts." Anyhow, that's the story of the Bouchard fight. But I think we should get back to. I want to talk about Lou and Gordie Howe again.
Yeah, you were saying one of the biggest fights back before the Bouchard fight was a big rivalry was between Gordie Howe and a guy Leapin Lou Fontinato.
Oh, he from Guelph, Ontario. He was the best, and I remember after that fight, there was in the magazine.
Well, why don't we hear Gordie Howe?
Oh, okay. Hear Gordie first.
Here's Gordie Howe talking about his famous fight with Lou Fontinato.
Imagine that. Gordie Howe, what a great hockey player, Mr. Hockey.
All right, I remember, well, I don't remember, but I remember seeing pictures of Lou Fontinato. I know you get this brought up all the time. But what happened? How did that get started? That's got to be the best fight ever. And Louis wouldn't think so, but you pick it up from there.
Well, I was with Louis here not too long ago, and he asked me if my ribs had healed since the beating I took. And I said, "What side, Louis?" So
yeah, your fist healed.
Basically, what it is, no, that's I think that's one of the common errors some people make. You do not study who's on the ice at the time you're playing against them. And I just so happen to know that Louis is out there. And the play started really maybe months ahead of time when I was leaning over with the idea if I can get a piece of Louis or the puck, Del Vecchio will have a shot on net. And I'm leaning over, he saw me there and he came back and wrapped me in the nose. You know, that blurs you up a little bit, and I started swinging. We both got a few minutes, and I'm dabbing here with a split lip, and he's saying, "What's the matter with your lip, Gordy?" You know, and that was an interpreter telling me. I couldn't understand him. Right? So after that, then I found myself identically. You ever been walking down the street and say, "I've been here before"? Well, I was skating down there. I said, "I've been here before." And when he came back, I went this. I missed a hand, caught his ear, and cut it practically. It was hanging.
Just happened to cut it in half.
Yeah.
Now they give you a shot at dawn if you ever did that.
That's right. But when he came out with the turban on, and I said, "What's the matter with your ear, Louis?" It was my turn. So when there's a fight started out between Red Kelly and Eddie Shack behind the net, and I'm leaning on the net enjoying this, and I thought, oh, he's out here. And as I turned around, he had dropped his gloves at the blue line and was coming in. I just pretend I didn't see him until I took the first swing.
Nose like this. But he's a good guy, giving it all, and he's a hard guy.
That is exactly why. That's why when we had a tribute dinner out in Vancouver, British Columbia, I asked personally if they'd invite Louis out. He was
That's
a policeman.
the least you could do.
And people that remember the magazine Life, it was a big deal. And at the back, it had, speaking of pictures, it had to be the whole page. And it showed.
It was 3 pages. They did a 3-page story on the fight.
And boy, did his nose was over to the side. I mean, you couldn't believe it. That would, when they hear a guy getting hit on the nose, his nose was over in his cheek. It was awful. And Lou was always saying he won the fight. I keep looking at him. We had him on too. And but he was a great guy. And I remember we were playing in Calgary, Spokane Comets, and we come down the lobby and waiting for the bus. And the little black and white TV there, the back of the lobby guy there, and we were watching, and Lou broke his neck. Now, remember, he went to check a guy and he tripped. He's playing for the Montreal Canadiens, and he tripped and fell head first into the boards, and he was in the hospital for 2 weeks. They didn't know whether he was going to live or die. But he was tough. He came back, and he was a great guy. He always was mad about that fight because he thought he won the fight. He's telling everybody he won the fight.
Well, we had Lou on the Grapevine show, and I'm looking for the tape. And when I find it, we'll play his version of the tape, and it's quite different from Gordy's.
All I know is he had a broken neck, and Gordy and him were good friends afterwards, like he said. And Lou retired. He had to retire after that. And he had a great farm, and he had, I think it was over 200 acres. And he retired as a farmer and lived a good life after that.